Picture this. A two-lane blacktop highway stretching 2,448 miles from the shores of Lake Michigan all the way to the Pacific Ocean in Santa Monica, California. No GPS, no interstate bypass, just you, your car, a neon-lit diner on the horizon, and the open road. This road has been called the Mother Road, America's Main Street, the Road of Dreams, and the Highway of Broken Hearts. It has carried desperate families fleeing starvation, soldiers heading to war, teenagers chasing freedom, and tourists from every corner of the world chasing a dream that America invented and named: the road trip. But Route 66 is also the story of how a country fell in love with driving, and then how that same love affair killed the very road it was born on. This is the full story of Route 66. Its birth, its golden era, and its decline. This is RoadXFactor. Every road has a story, and we drive straight into it. Before the road. What came first? To understand Route 66, you first have to understand the state of American roads before it existed. In 1910, there were 450,000 registered vehicles in the United States. By 1920, there were 8 million. America had fallen in love with the automobile, but it had almost no roads worthy of the name. Most roads outside of cities were mud tracks in winter and dust clouds in summer. Farmers couldn't reliably move produce to markets. Drivers on cross-country trips carried shovels, spare tires, and prayer. The demand for better roads was reaching a boiling point. Enter the Federal Aid Road Act of 1916. The first federal law providing financial support for road construction across America. It was the spark that lit the fuse, and one man in particular was ready to aim that fuse directly through the heart of America. The birth. Cyrus Avery and the numbering fight. Cyrus Avery was a realtor, oil businessman, and passionate road advocate from Tulsa, Oklahoma. He had a vision: a diagonal highway connecting Chicago to Los Angeles, cutting across the American heartland through 8 states, and, not entirely coincidentally, right through his home state of Oklahoma. Avery got his seat on the Joint Board of Interstate Highways in 1925, the federal committee designing America's first national highway numbering system. He fought hard for his diagonal route and won. The road was approved, but then came the fight over the number. Avery wanted the number 60, a round, prestigious number. But Kentucky's delegation furiously objected, insisting US 60 should run east-west through Kentucky. The argument went back and forth for months. Finally, in November 1926, a compromise was reached. The Chicago to Los Angeles highway would be called the US Route 66. Avery later said he chose 66 partly because the double digits were easy to remember and looked good on a road sign. He had no idea he was naming one of the most mythologized roads in human history. On November 11, 1926, Armistice Day, US Route 66 was officially commissioned, stretching 2,448 miles across 8 states: Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. The Mother Road was born. The early years: dirt, mud, and determination. Here's the catch. In 1926, Route 66 was barely a road at all. It was a patchwork of existing dirt tracks, gravel paths, brick-paved city streets, and a few actual paved stretches stitched together with federal ambition and very little concrete. The infamous Jericho Gap in Texas was one of the worst sections. A stretch of black Texas clay that turned into an impassable bog after rain, trapping cars for hours. Local farmers reportedly made good money charging to pull stranded motorists out with their mules. But the paving effort pushed forward, driven by the newly formed US Highway 66 Association, a coalition of chambers of commerce, business owners, and civic boosters along the route who understood that a paved road meant prosperity. By 1938, Route 66 became the first U.S. highway to be completely paved from start to finish. The last shovel of dirt gave way to asphalt in Amarillo, Texas. The celebration was enormous. The Dust Bowl and the Grapes of Wrath. Before Route 66 could become the road of vacation dreams, it first became the road of survival. In the 1930s, a brutal combination of severe drought and decades of poor farming techniques turned the Great Plains into a wasteland. The Dust Bowl devastated over 100 million acres across Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and Colorado. Hundreds of thousands of families lost everything: their farms, their savings, their futures. And so they took Route 66 west. An estimated 210,000 people, called Okies, though they came from across the plains, drove, walked, and rode west along Route 66 toward California, which promised agricultural work and a new life. John Steinbeck immortalized their journey in his 1939 masterpiece, The Grapes of Wrath, calling Route 66, for the first time, the Mother Road, the Road of Flight. That name stuck, the Mother Road. And it changed Route 66 from a highway into something more, a symbol of American resilience, migration, and the stubborn human refusal to give up. World War II, the road goes to war. Then came World War II, and Route 66 transformed again, this time into a military artery. Fort after fort, military base after military base was built along the Route 66 corridor, from Illinois to California. The road became a critical supply line, moving troops, equipment, and war materials to the massive military installations being built in the American West, particularly in California. Civilian travel dropped sharply due to gas rationing, but Route 66 businesses survived on military traffic. And when the war ended in 1945, hundreds of thousands of soldiers came home, many of them having been stationed in California. They remembered its sunshine, its opportunity, its energy, and they came back. On Route 66, this time with wives, children, and dreams. The Golden Era, neon, diners, and the American dream. And now we arrive at the Golden Era. The years between 1946 and 1960 were the greatest years Route 66 ever knew. The war was over, the economy was booming, cars were everywhere, and America had discovered something intoxicating: the road trip vacation. In 1946, musician Bobby Troup was driving Route 66 from Pennsylvania to Los Angeles when his wife Cynthia suggested he write a song about the road. The result, Get Your Kicks On, Route 66, was recorded by Nat King Cole that same year and became an instant hit. It was the road's official anthem, and it turned every gas station, diner, and motel on the route into a piece of romantic American mythology. The roadside culture that exploded along Route 66 in the 1950s was like nothing the world had ever seen. Entrepreneurs competed furiously for travelers' attention with increasingly outrageous roadside attractions. Teepee-shaped motels in Texas, dinosaur parks in Arizona, a cafe built inside a giant wigwam in California, giant blue whales in Oklahoma ponds, the Merrimack Caverns in Missouri, advertised on hundreds of barns as Jesse James's hideout. And here's a fact that will surprise you. Route 66 gave birth to fast food. Red's Giant Hamburg in Springfield, Missouri introduced the world's first known drive-through window. And the original McDonald's, the one that started it all, opened in San Bernardino, California, right on Route 66. The Golden Arches rose from the Mother Road. By the mid-1950s, Route 66 carried an astonishing volume of traffic. It was the busiest highway in America. Small towns that had been forgotten backwaters in 1920 were now thriving economies built entirely around the needs of passing travelers. Gas stations, diners, motels, souvenir shops, tourist attractions. Route 66 was a 2,448-mile-long main street, and business had never been better. The killer blow. the Interstate Highway Act of 1956. And then, at the absolute peak of Route 66's success, the blow that would ultimately kill it was signed into law. On June 29, 1956, President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, authorizing $25 billion, the largest public works expenditure in American history to that point, to build a 41,000-mile system of high-speed interstate highways across the country. Eisenhower had been inspired by two things: his miserable experience driving across America in a military convoy in 1919, and his awe at the German Autobahn during World War II. The new interstates were designed to bypass towns entirely, running outside population centers with controlled access ramps because stopping at every small town slowed traffic. This was efficient, it was modern, and it was the beginning of the end for Route 66 and every town built along it. Route 66 author Joe Sonderman put it perfectly. It was a victim of its own success. The road had worked so well, carried so much traffic, been so clearly essential to American life that it inspired the creation of something that made it obsolete. The decline, ghost towns, and faded neon. The interstates didn't kill Route 66 overnight. It was a slow death, town by town, diner by diner, motel by motel, over nearly 3 decades. The pattern was devastatingly consistent. First, the interstate would open nearby. Then, travelers would use the faster road, bypassing the old Route 66 alignment. Within months, gas stations began closing because their customers were gone. Diners closed. Motels sat empty. Small towns lost their economic lifeblood almost overnight. The 1965 Highway Beautification Act made things even worse. It restricted signage on the new interstates, meaning that Route 66 businesses couldn't even advertise to drivers on the bypassing highways. The travelers didn't know these businesses existed. They couldn't find them even if they wanted to. By 1972, I-44 had replaced Route 66 across all of Missouri. By the late 1970s, most of the route had been effectively bypassed. In 1984, the very last section of original U.S. Route 66, a stretch near Williams, Arizona, was bypassed by I-40. And on June 27, 1985, U.S. Route 66 was officially removed from the United States highway system, decommissioned, erased from the maps. Nearly 900 miles of the original route had been completely paved over. Ghost towns multiplied. Entire communities that had existed for Route 66 simply faded away when the traffic stopped coming. The mother road had been abandoned by the country that created it. The revival. The road refuses to die. But here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because Route 66 refused to stay dead. Almost immediately after decommissioning, a grassroots preservation movement began. In 1987, the historic Route 66 Federation was founded. In 1990, Congress passed the Route 66 Study Act, officially recognizing the highway as a symbol of the American people's heritage of travel and their legacy of seeking a better life. In 1999, the Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program was signed into law, providing federal funds to preserve historic structures along the route. And then the tourists came, from the most unexpected places. Europeans, Japanese, Australians. Travelers from around the world who had grown up with the mythology of Route 66 through music, film, and television began flying to America specifically to drive the Mother Road. Today, international tourists make up a huge share of Route 66 travelers. As historian David Dunaway says, "This is not a road for America. This is the world's road." In 2026, the year Route 66 turns 100. The United States is celebrating the centennial of the Mother Road with major events from Chicago to Santa Monica. The U.S. Postal Service is issuing 8 commemorative stamps. Cities across 8 states are hosting festivals, exhibitions, and drives. The road that was declared dead is turning 100 years old, and it has never felt more alive. The legacy. What Route 66 really means. Route 66 is more than a road. It is a mirror that America held up to itself across a century of extraordinary change. It was the road of the desperate and the hopeful, the road of war and of peace, the road of neon dreams and forgotten towns. It carried Dust Bowl refugees to California and GIS home from war. It launched fast food, the modern road trip, and the American motel industry. It inspired songs, novels, films, and television shows that shaped how the entire world imagined America. And it showed us, painfully, that progress can erase the very things it grows from. The Mother Road is 100 years old in 2026, and it is still out there, if you know where to look. The neon still flickers in Tucumcari. The Blue Swallow Motel still takes guests in New Mexico. The Cadillac Ranch still stands outside Amarillo. And if you drive the old alignment slowly enough, through the small towns, past the abandoned diners and the faded signs, you can still feel it. The America that was. The road that carried it all. That's the story of Route 66. Its birth, its golden era, and its decline. And its refusal to truly end. If this video took you somewhere new, drop your thoughts in the comments. Share it with someone who loves the journey. Subscribe so you never miss a mile. And ring that bell, because on RoadXFactor, the next video is always just around the corner. Until next time, stay curious, stay exploring.